seated will be our fifth panel, talking about L1B visas, updates, strategies for Indian multinational companies. There will be just a moment here while I gather my documents. Okay. Our speaker will be Scott Fitzgerald, managing partner at the Boston, Massachusetts office of Fragomen, Delray, Bernstein, and Lowy, and managing director of Fragomen's International Services India Private Limited. Mr. Fitzgerald has previously served as a managing partner of the firm's Washington, D.C. and Vienna, Virginia offices, as well as an associate in the firm's New York office. He's admitted to practice law in Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Washington, D.C. He's a member of the Labor Relations Committee of the United States Chamber of Commerce and the U.S. India Business Council. He's a member of the American Bar Association, Federal Bar Association, and many other organizations, and serves on the board of Council for Emerging National Security Affairs and the Council for Emerging Domestic Policy. He lectures and writes frequently on business immigration issues, and we're really excited to hear from him today. We also have Anuj is here. Welcome back. Yeah, vast experience with WePro and sending foreign nationals and managing the U.S. contingency of the WePro workforce for several years. Brian Bossy is here from FIS. When we go around to the immigration law conferences in the United States, his company is always there, and he's usually the representative. And when I go to the conference, he and I frequently visit and have an opportunity to talk. So I enjoy meeting with Brian. I'm glad he's here. I feel somewhat responsible for his being here just a little bit. I helped instigate that, and so grateful that he's shown up. And his company, FIS, is integral in the credential evaluation. I think sets the standard, maybe the industry standard for excellence in that area. So, you know, each of you, I'm sure, has the requirement of using a credential evaluator at some point, and certainly you should consider Brian and his company as a good resource for that in the future if you ever need it. But knows a lot about how the companies are using credential evaluation and in the process of making sure workers are able to come and fulfill the requirements for either H1, L1, or some kind of a green card process. And finally, we have Abigail Aronson from the U.S. Consulate. We're excited to have her here and appreciate her accepting our invitation to come. She's been a Foreign Service officer since 1997, and since September of this year, has been country coordinator for fraud prevention programs based at the U.S. Consulate General in Chennai here in India. Previously, she was consular chief at the U.S. Embassy in Tirana, Albania. Other overseas assignments include being consul at the U.S. Consulate General she's had in the United States include offices within the Bureau of Legislative Affairs and the Executive Office of the Bureau of Consular Affairs. Again, an excellent asset to have here, and somebody hopefully you'll be able to corner somewhere in this conference and get some time to talk, and just appreciate each of these panelists. At this point, I'm going to turn the time over to Scott, and look forward to hearing from each of the panels.
Yeah. The presentation coming up. All right, I'll talk off the top of my head. It's no problem. As the presentation comes up, we had a phenomenal dialogue out in the hall. Wait, that's better. I'll just say, skip, please. Keep going right there. Thank you. So we had a great dialogue out in the hall, and we talked about what we're going to talk about today. Manoj Samatal, who's the president of NASSCOM, has been widely covered in the press in the last couple of weeks in anticipation of President Obama's arrival, that NASSCOM member companies are struggling to get their member employees into the United States. That visa petitions across all categories are being denied and rejected, that individuals are being turned around at the border. CBP sent one of India's most prominent lawyers home about a month ago, which caused quite a stir in the press. And so we're in a tough environment. And so what my goal is in the next 10 minutes is just to set the stage for what the environment is, to dispel some mistaken assumptions about some of the categories and how they work and how they don't, and then to try to tee up the dialogue. Some of you are going to be talking as NASSCOM members with Samatal and Amit Soccer later today. There's an opportunity to have your voices heard. It's important. It's very important. The opportunity literally is tomorrow. On Monday, myself and four of my partners are also going to be meeting with senior consular officials in Delhi to talk about these issues. So just to set the stage, I assume everybody in the audience probably knows what an L1 is. Intercompany transferee. Somebody's got to have at least a year working for the company, let's just say here in India, working, and they're going to be transferred in the United States to work for an affiliate or a branch or a parent or subsidiary. It's that simple. You're either a manager or an executive. Those cases are typically a little more straightforward, especially if you manage people. If you manage a function, it gets a little more complicated. But most of the time, the cases are L1B, specialized knowledge. And that's where it gets very complicated, because we get into definitions of what specialized knowledge is. Okay? Next picture. Blanket. What's a blanket? Well, blanket is a process by which a company can bypass filing cases with the U.S. CIS in the United States, file directly at the consulate. You have to meet these criteria, all right? 1 year, 3 or more branches. And in one of the following, there's a misconception that you file a lot of petitions, L1 petitions. That's only one of the criteria. U.S. sales 25 million, U.S. workforce 1,000 people, or 10 U.S. petitions. I would encourage every company in this room, if you do not have blanket certification and you meet any of these criteria, you should absolutely apply. Because it's faster, it's less expensive, and as we'll talk about, the adjudicatory standard is clear. Okay? Okay, within the U.S., and this is a little thick, but essentially it all comes down to proprietary to India, and you know, I just remember the guy having long, flowing gray hair. It really impressed me. Looked like he was on a movie set. And I asked him this question to tell me, like, how can we argue? How can we articulate what proprietary methodologies are when you are implementing somebody else's strategies? That's the basis of all of our L1B work for these consulting companies. Okay? Now, let me just check here. Supervised by staff, that's all fine. Everybody basically understands the work, the requirements of supervision. You have to be supervised by your clients, and about these methodologies and tools. Okay? Now, 2 years ago,